Hello and welcome to the Game Theory Podcast. I'm your host, Sam Vicini. We're powered by CLNS Media. Today on the show, we have good friend of the program, Chris Stone, here to break down all of the NBA draft. We are live, I would say 20 minutes after the draft has ended, 30 minutes after the draft has ended, right?
Yeah, it's pretty close to the end of the draft here.
Yeah, so I haven't even gotten my full bearings yet. You were doing the same thing I was tonight. You were giving out grades over at Fansided. I was doing it over at Sporting News. Before we even go crazy here, let's start just by kind of going with what were your overall impressions of the night?
I thought for the most part people drafted pretty well. I thought the top of the draft was, as predictable kind of, I think, as people thought it was. I still went with Josh Jackson at 3 today, just kind of on a hunch. Obviously that was wrong, but it was either him or Tatum for the Celtics, I think, at 3, at least in that interpretations. But otherwise, pretty predictable. Things obviously got crazy around number 7. But it was a fun night. A lot of action in the second round, which I thought was entertaining as well. A bunch of trades and picks moving around and people kind of getting the people that they wanted.
Yeah, the second round this year was actually really, really strong. So I really liked that aspect of it. The rest of it, though, I was struck by how competent it was. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I was doing grades all night, and I gave out 1 C-, and the rest, everything else was largely positive. I was really impressed with what the teams did, and, I don't mean it as, I'm smarter than these teams, but I really was impressed with what they did over the course of the evening.
Right, and I think it helps. A lot of people got down on this draft class, I think, because they realized that there weren't a ton of superstars, but I do think this draft class is super deep, and it helps when grading out picks that there are so many guys who are pretty good and have a potential to be a rotation player, all the way down into the early 40s probably. That can make teams look really good, and I think that helps a lot.
Yeah, it definitely helps a lot that a draft is very deep and a draft actually has talent in it. Last year, I think a lot of teams kind of got caught just kind of taking guys they like, Right. Just kind of being okay, no one is good. We're just going to take someone we like. Whereas this year, almost everyone was good, it seemed like. From 11 to 45, there was a very marginal difference this year in terms of talent as compared to other years at the very least.
Yeah, I agree. I think I came away only with a couple of below average grades for teams as a whole, not necessarily for individual picks. And I thought teams as a whole did pretty well. There were some picks that I just generally disagreed with assessment on. So for example, we have TJ Leaf rated significantly lower than number 18. We have DJ Wilson rated a little lower than 17 and stuff like that. But I understand why those teams took those players, and I don't necessarily think that they were bad decisions for doing that.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. DJ Wilson fits very well within Milwaukee's ethos of wanting long, athletic guys who can bring skill to the table, who can shoot a little bit. TJ Leaf with Indiana at least fits really well with Miles Turner, right?
Yep.
The worst grade that I gave out over the course of the night was Kyle Kuzma. I think it's at least an interesting pick. I think that it is a pick that could certainly work out. The Lakers scouting staff actually has a really strong, track record of finding these guys. And I was just surprised, though, because Kuzma was incredibly inconsistent throughout his college career. He has a lot of talent, certainly. 6'9", 7-foot wingspan, can shoot corner threes already, can rebound a little bit. Going to be like a stretch 4 type. I just thought there were many, many guys better on the board, including Shemi Ojeleye, who does many of the things that Kyle Kuzma does. He just does them better.
I was just about to say, how do you take Kuzma when Semi is available, given that I think he does all of that stuff just a little bit better, is almost certainly a better defender, pretty decent three-point shooter, assuming that you buy into the shot. That's somebody that I would have rather had at 27 to fill the same type of role. If, the Lakers were committed to finding some front court shooting at that spot, which like I think is a thing that they need and something that they should have sought out in the draft. But I agree with you that I don't think that Kuzma is necessarily the right selection there, just from a talent standpoint, given what else was available.
Yeah, I agree there. But before we get into the weeds on draft picks, right? Let's kind of start with what the biggest news of the evening was. It was clearly the Jimmy Butler trade. Jimmy Butler and number 16 overall. How you can, trade for Jimmy Butler and get the 16th overall pick
and get a draft pick back.
I don't know. But they get Jimmy Butler and 16 for Chris Dunn, Zach LaVine, and number 7. When it was first announced as just Jimmy Butler for those 3 assets, and I was like, You know what? I understand. Like, I think that it's probably an underpay, but at the same time, I don't know that Chicago was going to do better, right? Like, I don't think Chicago is going to do better than essentially 3 lottery picks, even if, we know that Chris Dunn has really not done well at all over the course of his rookie year. Even though he's really good defensively, he did not really show anything in the way of point guard skills at 6'3", 6'4". Zach LaVine obviously is coming off of an ACL injury, and for someone who is athletically gifted and as athletically dependent as he is, that's a little bit of a scary proposition, right?
Yep, absolutely.
But at the same time, I understood it. Like, I figured, Chicago's betting on these guys' talent, and with the number 7 overall pick, they're going to get a really, really good guy who, in most years, would probably go number 5, given the depth of this lottery, right? So, I got it, but then the 16th pick got added and significantly cut into the value of that number 7 overall pick. And this is just a disaster to me now. Like, that number 16 overall pick, you can say, like, okay, that's essentially just a rotation player, but it's just weird. Like,
it's super weird to throw in the extra pick. It really makes no sense.
Yeah, no, I don't understand how you can throw in the extra pick there. I would have been like, okay, if it's a second round pick, it's like a late second rounder, whatever. Go ahead, have fun. But the 16th overall pick, especially in a draft that is this deep, does not make sense to give up for whenever you're also trading out Jimmy Butler. It is the dumbest possible thing. So I want to hear what your reaction was, because I have clearly kind of enumerated mine.
Yeah, so I have several thoughts. The Bulls were the team that I gave an F to in my draft grades. As a whole, factoring in the Butler trade, I think that giving up the 16th pick in addition to giving up Jimmy Butler is just a totally disastrous move that doesn't make any sense. And when you pile onto that the fact that they sold Jordan Bell's slot to the Warriors, it's just absolutely ridiculous, and it's insane. I do think that...
We'll talk about that in a minute. That was an just equally insane. Dumb thing.
I do think... I know that a lot of people don't like Lauri Markkanen, and I understand why. He has defensive problems. Like, there's some real questions about where he fits on that end in the NBA. I will say that, like, if there's somebody that I trust, and I know people also don't like this person, to get out of him things that other NBA coaches may not because they're creative enough offensively, I think Fred Hoiberg can do that. Like, I trust him to put Markkanen in some situations to succeed and get creative with finding ways to get him open looks, which I think Markkanen can do. So I'm totally okay with them taking Markkanen there, but just like giving up the 16th pick doesn't make any sense when the rest of the deal sounded totally fine to me. I have some thoughts from like the Minnesota angle too. Like, I don't understand drafting Justin Patton with the 16th pick.
Neither do I, but we'll get there in a second.
But whatever. Like, from the angle of the Bulls, I really hated what they did over the course of the night, even though I'm totally okay with Markkanen being their selection at number 7. Like, but adding Dunn to the roster of point guards that they already have really doesn't make any sense. They're just building a stable of point guards who can't shoot. Maybe the deal, there were a few rumors floating around Twitter that, like, Dwayne Wade hadn't fully committed to taking his player option, so, like, maybe it's worth factoring that in, that, like, they're going to get him potentially to opt out of his option, which
so
I think would be nice.
Talk about that. There's no chance
Sure.
that that's going to happen. So what's
I
going to
kind
happen?
of agree.
Yeah,
because taking $25 million sounds pretty good.
He's going to take his $24 million. He absolutely should make this decision. And then, maybe in January or December, whenever they're out of it, he's going to get some sort of buyout, right? But he's going to be paid at a level that is commensurate with $24 million for at least half of next season.
Yeah, I mean, I think that is the thing that he should do. I tend to agree. But I think that the trade as a whole was kind of a disaster for Chicago. I think that had they just done it for LaVine Dunn in number 7, that it would have been perfectly fine for both sides, and I don't think anybody would have thought that it was ridiculous. And I think when that trade came out, most people's reaction was, this is fine. And then when the 16th pick trickled out, everybody was like, what did you do? And why did you do it?
Yeah, I just didn't understand that aspect of it. And we can go to Justin Patton now, right? I don't even think that Minnesota took advantage of the pick that they got. So Minnesota has Karl Towns, Gorgie Jang, and Cole Aldrich on this roster. What they have a need for Justin Patton for, I genuinely don't know.
And they're adding a guy who, at least in crunch time minutes, is probably going to be at his best playing at the 4.
In Jimmy Butler?
In Butler, yeah.
Maybe. I mean, he's probably going to play the 3 with Andrew Wiggins, right? In crunch time. That makes sense. But nonetheless, I don't understand why Minnesota is loading up on bigs like this. It just kind of feels like Tibbs is going backwards almost.
Yeah, it's weird to me because it felt like Tibbs made one of the best deals that I can remember for a person who is a combination head coach and GM.
Yes, agreed.
The deal seemed phenomenal, and we don't really typically associate head coaches who are also GMs making phenomenal deals, although shout out the Clippers for making some nice deals later on. And then he just totally ruined it. And it's weird because it feels like he's still stuck coaching when he was coaching a couple of years ago, and the NBA rapidly evolved. But he seems really stuck on this path of wanting to play 2 big men, and I really don't understand it because I don't think it's really hard to build a roster that features a lot of 2 big lineups.
Well, the reason
even the Spurs, who are really good at it, are trying to now offload LaMarcus Aldridge and get smaller players.
Well, the reason that I don't really get it is you have this unicorn in Karl Anthony Towns, and you should be trying to play him at center as much as possible. And you have, Gorgie Jang, who to me can't guard 4s, and you have Cole Aldrich, who's not ever going to guard 4s. It just doesn't. I don't know. Nothing about the pick made a whole lot of sense to me, but I feel like whenever we're discussing it in the context of this Jimmy Butler trade, we're going on too much about the pick and not discussing enough how much Minnesota just ended up fleecing the Chicago Bulls for a top 15 player in the league, given the fact that nothing the Bulls got really is a sure thing. Maybe the most sure thing is Markkanen at this stage, and I think you and I are both relatively higher on Markkanen than a lot of people are, right?
Yeah, I think so, and I think both of us would still call it a fleecing. Even if you think Markkanen is a perfectly fine player, and if you're high on him in their system like I am, I still think that the Bulls got totally clowned in this trade. And I think that you're right, that even though Justin Patton isn't maximizing the pick that the Timberwolves got back, I don't really think that it matters that much because I think that the trade for Butler was so overwhelmingly good that the Timberwolves could have taken almost anybody at 16, and it still would have been a massive win for them. Yeah. It's just the fact that they got that extra asset, whoever that asset was going to be, what was ridiculous. And even though Patton left me scratching my head a little bit, it'll be fine. They'll figure it out. Maybe they'll trade somebody and open up some salary space or something. But I thought they came out huge winners tonight, getting Butler in that deal and put themselves in a position to be significantly better as a team next year.
Yeah, so Justin Patton, I have at number 26 on my board. I have Lauri Markkanen at 10. So there is a significant difference beyond number 7 versus number 16 here in my mind. Like, I think that Lowry is genuinely going to step in for the Chicago Bulls next year and probably be like one of the 3 or 4 best shooting centers in the NBA. And that's not nothing. That's going to be super valuable in Fred Hoiberg's offense. Ultimately, though, what this comes down to is the Chicago Bulls clearly did not know how to value Jimmy Butler with 2 years left on his deal, given the fact that it certainly seems like the Indiana Pacers turned down Julius Randle 27 and 28 for 1 year of Paul George. I think that what the Bulls got is certainly better than that. Like, depending on what your thoughts are on Julius Randle, probably. I probably like Randle slightly more than I like Markkanen. Not a lot more, but maybe a little bit more.
Sure.
But given the fact that Markkanen's going to have 3 extra years on his rookie deal, they're probably, maybe a little bit equal. Maybe Markkanen's asset value is a little bit higher. And then clearly Zach LaVine and, Chris Dunn, even regardless of what you think of Chris Dunn's rookie year, are better assets than 27 and 28. So, like...
Yeah, I mean, you're talking about Kyle Kuzma and Tony Bradley right now, so...
Right. So, like... Yes, the Butler deal is clearly more valuable than that, but this is after Paul George has already said to the Pacers, hey, I'm not returning, and then it's not like a crazy, ridiculous amount better than that either, And then you throw in 16, and 16 makes up quite a bit of value for that. And it just, none of it makes sense to me. None of what Gar Foreman and John Paxson have done, between number 38 selling that pick for $3.5 million. And the funniest part about all of that is with that pick is that it's the Kings pick that everyone for the last 7 years has been waiting to transfer because it hasn't been in the top 10. And it eventually becomes a second round pick and they just sell it. This is an asset that they valued from Cleveland in the Luol Deng deal. And now they've essentially, did they get 1 first round pick for Luol Deng, right? Or did they get
sounds
none?
right.
Did they get 2 in that deal? I don't remember.
I don't either.
Because if they essentially sold Luol Deng for $3.5 million and Andrew Bynum, I believe that was an Andrew Bynum move, right?
It appears that they got 1 pick.
They got 3 picks.
Three picks. Yeah.
But none of those
turned into anything.
Yeah, none of those picks really were anything. I believe that they were 2 second round picks. So you traded Luol Deng for $3.5 million and 2 second round picks. That is tremendous asset management by Chicago.
Yeah, gotta get your assets up. The $3.5 million could come in handy when you have to pay Dwayne Wade.
Yeah, and this is going to be, or as our good friend Ricky O'Donnell brought up, when you have to pay Luis Robert, given the fact that the same owner owns the White Sox and the Bulls.
Yeah. I don't know. It would be really hard, I think, to come up with any type of optimistic scenario for the Bulls out of this, to be honest. I guess you could say that they decided they didn't want to put themselves in the same situation as Indiana is with Paul George, but even then, like we said, Indiana got some value theoretically out of that deal that they just turned down. And, it seems like maybe then the other argument is that Chicago just wanted to start rebuilding as soon as possible, but it's not like their roster is particularly built to start that rebuild right away.
Yeah, no, it's not. They're going to have to do significant, work on this entire thing because they haven't yet, torn the whole thing down. They still have Dwayne Wade. They still have Robin Lopez. They still have, Nikola Mirotic's restricted free agency rights. And they still have, all of these other small things that they need to figure out a taker for. And given what Robin Lopez, for instance, has gone for in trades previously, I think he's much better than what he's gone for in trades recently. But given what he's gone for in trades recently, you have to wonder what his value is around the league. You have to wonder what kind of value you're going to get from Dwayne Wade other than monetary value in terms of him giving back money on a buyout. None of it makes sense to me.
Yeah, I totally agree. I don't think there's any way that people should come away feeling like the Bulls did anything better than have the worst night of any team in the NBA tonight.
Yes, that is absolutely true. I can't really see any sort of other excuse for this, really. Let's move on. Let's talk about for what my money was probably the best night of any team. If I'm going to say that, who do you think had the best night of any team outside of the Timberwolves, just given the fact that they got Jimmy Butler for nothing?
I feel like, given that I know your position on Jason Tatum, I would guess the Celtics.
Well, no. I mean, clearly the Celtics are my pick, but, like, who would be your pick here?
Oh, who would be my pick? I kind of really like what the Kings did, to be honest, which is really weird to say. Mm-hmm. But they got the point guard that they wanted. I think at number 5, they got him without having to do any of the crazy trades that they were talking about doing, which I think is fantastic. I thought that snagging Harry Giles at 20 is definitely a risk worth taking, because if he turns out and, the medical stuff isn't nearly as bad as we think it is, and he gets that athleticism back, I think he's a total steal at number 20. I'm a little hesitant, I guess, about Justin Jackson at 15, but, there's not a ton of really good wings in the middle of this draft. Most of them are kind of the second-round value guys. And so I think taking him there is totally fine. He fills a position of need. He's going to give you some shooting. I don't know that I really love the trio of Fox, Hield, Jackson as a defensive combo.
Really?
I think it's okay, but, I don't think it's great. I think Fox is all right. He's pretty good. He's going to defend the point of attack. Jackson, to me, is going to struggle to defend a lot of NBA threes because I just don't think he's, bulky enough to do it. I think that he is someone who would be better off defending a lot more twos and people that he can bother with his length more than he can at the 3.
That's fair, because Buddy is always going to be defending.
Yeah, Buddy's just, not going to defend.
I think he...
well.
He's
gonna try.
To me, that's always been kind of a misnomer for him, because his sophomore year he was pretty good defensively. His junior year and his senior year, when he took on a bunch of offensive load, he was not good defensively. I don't think anyone will say otherwise. But on a team like the Kings, where it does seem like they're building up more offensive talent, I just wonder if he can, as he continues to drop a little bit in usage offensively, can continue to up his, usage defensively, I guess is a way to put it.
Yeah, if he can be okay, then it's totally fine, and I don't think it's that bad. But Jackson is just somebody who I've always imagined would be a better person defending twos than threes, and I think that in that lineup he's going to have to defend a lot more threes. But, I said, not a ton of wings in the middle of the draft, so it's a totally fine pick. It fills a position of need. He's obviously a good shooter. I feel pretty comfortable with them taking him at 15, and then they grabbed Frank Mason at 34.
I think you and I are both very clearly high on Frank Mason. Which is great. We love Frank.
Team Frank Mason forever. I think he, will do some nice things there, and he's someone who I think, along with De'Aaron Fox, really, and all of the guys that they drafted, really high character guys, really guys who are going to bring a want-to-win attitude to the Kings, and that's something that they need.
Yeah, that's definitely true. They definitely improved in terms of character tonight. That's the biggest reason that I like what they did. De'Aaron Fox is basically unimpeachable in terms of character for anyone who has met him, any sort of NBA executive. Justin Jackson, same, basically. There's a concern of, he might be a little bit soft because of his frame and everything. But, in terms of character, unimpeachable. Harry Giles, a kid that's been told that he is the best player in the world for the first 18 years of his life. There are going to be some issues there. But at the same time, he is known generally as an incredible kid, right? Everyone who has spoken to him really loves him. And Frank Mason's just a killer, right? Frank Mason's exactly what you want your backup point guard to be. He's a good kid, certainly, but he's just everything you want your backup point guard to be. In terms of their draft, in terms of talent, though, I have no qualms with De'Aaron Fox. I have no qualms with Justin Jackson. I am concerned about Giles. I've heard differing things in terms of the knees. Some teams had him off of their board. Some teams thought they were fine. which
Sure.
I don't really understand how that can be the case. Differing doctors can come up with differing results. Certainly, I don't doubt that.
I don't have a medical degree, so I don't know that I can answer that either.
But it just seems that to go on two total different ends of the spectrum in that way would be strange to me, I guess. Because the Kings, if you're taking him at 20, very clearly have given him a green light, right? It goes by flags. You can have a green flag that go ahead and take them. You can have a red flag, which is guy goes off the board. And you can have some sort of leeway in the middle, right? Where, if it gets good enough to where, or if the value gets good enough, I think we saw that tonight with number 47 with Ike on a Bogu.
Yep.
If the value gets good enough, we'll take him. Hartenstein's another one. Yeah, I believe he has some back issues. I was a little bit, I think I kind of boxed myself in while mock drafting. Sure. Thinking that there were going to be more internationals that went in the first round, just because I thought the Spurs would want to try and stash. I thought Utah would want to try and stash, but instead we got trades, which worked out, right?
Right. Yeah.
So
that made sense.
Yeah, and it makes sense in a really weak international crop as well. But going back to the Harry Giles thing, I don't know whose doctors to believe. I don't know what front offices to believe. You know what I mean? So. We'll see with Giles. I'm not, I think it's a good swing to take, certainly.
Right.
They could afford to take it. I don't know how he fits with Scal and Willie Cauley-Stein, and does this essentially mean that they're punting on Papagiannis?
Yeah, maybe. I mean, I get that there are definitely some concerns here. There's the injury concerns. There's just kind of the roster fit concerns, but there's not really anybody who went off the board right after Giles in kind of that next stretch that really screams to me that it's somebody the Kings should have taken. I think you could maybe make an argument that Anunoby would be a better fit there than Giles would be because he could play power forward and you could let all those other guys play center. But he too has some injury concerns, and as we've talked about before, his offense is really bad. So I think I'm pretty okay with the Kings taking a swing on Giles and hoping that it works out and just seeing where it goes, given that that's a team that is in a massive rebuilding phase and just needs to find some talented guys to fit their roster.
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to yell, and this is how we'll transition to who my favorite draft was. If I'm them, I'm taking Shemi Ojeleye and being happy.
That's fair.
I had him at number 19 on my board. I had Giles at number 23 on my board. Ojeleye actually fits a need for them. He's going to be able to guard 3s and 4s. He's going to provide some, positional versatility for them in a way that they don't really have anyone like that on their roster, especially since Rudy Gay is leaving, it seems like.
Right.
But he's going to do that same stuff for Boston. Boston ends up getting Jason Tatum, who I had at number 2 on my board. Apparently Danny Ainge had him at number 1 on his board.
Number 1!
That's difficult for me to believe. I mean,
yeah,
I'm sure
you can clock me in as not a believer in that statement.
Yeah. I had Markelle Fultz at number 1 very clearly. Fultz is, an awesome player. He's going to be great in Philadelphia. I've broken that down to death, though, on this podcast. It makes perfect sense why Philadelphia would want to go after Markelle Fultz. Jason Tatum at number 2 with Boston. Ends up going number 3. I have him at number 2 on my board. Tatum is a really interesting player for a lot of people. What it comes down to for me is character mixed with the fact that he is also really incredibly skilled and able to create a shot out of thin air, right? The ability to do that makes a lot of sense to me, and it makes a lot of that combination makes a lot of sense whenever you're trying to figure out who the best players in this draft are going to be. And it's why I have Josh Jackson at number 3, right? I believe strongly that both Jason Tatum and Josh Jackson are going to become the best players that they can be. They're going to reach their highest ceiling because they're going to work at it. They're going to become, those kind of players that you can just trust. And with Tatum, I really like the mix next to Jaylen Brown. I will like the mix if they end up getting Gordon Hayward next to Gordon Hayward. There's just a lot to like there to me, and we'll see with how the leaves fall with their roster. Ojale could be a fairly reasonable replacement for Jay Crowder at some point. Obviously, there's going to be some growing pains there, but maybe this makes Boston a little bit more amenable to getting rid of Jay Crowder. We'll see what ends up happening with guys like Avery Bradley. They're going to have to make cap space for Gordon Hayward if they want to go out and sign him. But in the end, Boston getting two of my top 20 players, along with guys like, Kadeem Allen and a flyer on Jabari Bird, I would almost have to believe is going to be an Abdul Nader like stash pick.
That's what I figured.
Yeah, all of this makes sense to me, and this is a great example of a smart team handling the draft process in a smart way.
Yeah, I mean, my only difference of opinion really is just with Tatum, but that's because I like Jackson more than Tatum. But I think that Tatum is a perfectly fine person to take at 3. I will be interested to see how he fits alongside Jaylen Brown. I kind of wonder if they're hoping that Tatum can kind of play that small ball power forward that he did in college next to Brown. Is that kind of what you think that they'll do eventually? Or maybe not. I don't really know.
Well, I just think that both of those guys are like those combo 3-4s.
Yeah.
Right?
And they can both kind of do it.
Yeah, and they can both play together. Like, they can both guard 3s. They can both guard 4s. You can just do it on a matchup basis, right?
Yeah, I think that that's fair. Yeah, my only discrepancy really comes in Tatum and Jackson. I think Ojale at 37 is a total steal. I think the Kadeem Allen pick is a little weird. I understand that people really like his defense, but I just don't know that there's any way he makes their roster given what they have at the guard spot already. And I think that makes that pick a little weird. I don't really know how much value you're going to get out of that, especially since he's already 24.
I would just assume that, what ends up happening with him is that, I don't know if that's going to be a stash too. Maybe he ends up being a 2-way. Maybe something like that. I don't know. The Allen one is interesting. I think Bird we can feel pretty safe is like an Abdul Nader situation. But, with Allen you could go kind of a lot of different ways.
I agree. But yeah, I mean, I think that they had a totally good draft. It wasn't my favorite. It wasn't my least favorite. I think a lot of it depends just on how you feel about Tatum. And but clearly Ojale is a home run at 37.
Yeah, I agree. UCLA, I think at number 2 is Los Angeles is a way for us to go. It's been a long night and a long month, really.
I'm with you.
Covering the NBA draft. Los Angeles with the Lakers is where we want to go next. Lonzo Ball, number 2. I'm okay with that, right? Like, this is a pick that makes sense. It's something that, again, on this podcast we've been talking about for so long that, LeVar Ball basically willed it into existence, right?
Willed into existence.
They end up having 27 and 28, and I don't like the way that they use those picks, I guess. I do like the way that they use 28 in that...
Yeah, I think they use 28 really well.
Yeah, if they get, Josh Hart, who is a really, really good player, and Thomas Bryant, who doesn't fit a need at all for them. They have 47 big guys, and, you could have taken Monte Morris as your backup point guard, and I think that would have made a lot of sense. But I'm okay with Thomas Bryant. I think that he has a potential to be an NBA player, which is interesting, especially at number 42. That's really all you're hoping for. At 27, they take Kyle Kuzma. That was probably my worst grade of the draft.
Yeah, I don't really like that pick at all. Kuzma's fine, but I think that there are a lot of players who are more valuable at 27. Like, for example, I'd rather have Josh Hart at 27, even though they got him at 30, than Kuzma. I think, obviously, Semi Ojeleye would be perfectly fine. Maybe Jordan Bell would have been a really good pick at 27 for them. I think that they had a lot of options at 27 that were not Kuzma, but it seems like they really like him. And, if that's the guy that they like and they trust their scouting on him, then that seems totally fine.
Yeah. And I mean, their scouting department is really good. So
sure. Yeah.
That's fine. Yeah. Let's move on real quick. Let's go to number 4. Phoenix ends up taking Josh Jackson. That's going to be a really good pick. I don't think either of us have any qualms. I would say that maybe of all of the high-end picks, other than maybe Markelle Fultz, but to be honest, I might like Jackson just as much. That's probably the best fit of any prospect in a single place.
Yeah, I tend to agree. He brings a lot of stuff that they don't already have.
Yep.
One of the kind of things that I like about Jackson is I feel like his energy and competitiveness can be something that spills over to his teammates, which will maybe help Devin Booker and Marquise Chris in their quest to actually play defense. Which, maybe not, but I'm kind of hopeful. I like what Phoenix did with the rest of their draft. Davon Reed at 32 is maybe a little bit high, but if you're going to take someone a little bit high, I think taking someone who is a 6'5" guy with 6'10" wingspan and has 3-and-D credentials is worth taking a risk on. And then I like Alec Peters at 54. He can certainly shoot it, and that may be enough to put him on the roster because front court shooting is super valuable.
They also have the draft rights to multiple people named Alec, I think, right? Because they still have
I think
Alec Brown.
Yeah.
Davon Reed was probably a little bit of a reach for me at 32. I would have taken guys like, Wes Iwundu, Ojale, obviously. Ojale fell to 39. That's crazy. I'd have taken Jawan Evans, certainly, as well, assuming that Eric Bledsoe is going to move on at some point.
Right.
Beyond that, though, I think that you're in that range where you can make very differing assumptions and differing values. We've talked Sacramento at 5, Orlando at number 6. Jonathan Isaac, I like the fit there. I like the mix of talent with he and Aaron Gordon.
Interesting. I don't
what
like
don't
that
you
fit
like?
very much. I feel like Isaac is probably going to be at his best playing at power forward, and I also think that's the best spot for Aaron Gordon. So unless you feel comfortable with Isaac developing into a center kind of long term, I worry about how those two mesh together. Because I don't really think that Isaac is going to be a particularly great 3 in the NBA. I don't know that he's athletic enough.
I think he's athletic enough. I just don't know that he has the perimeter skill to do it offensively. I think he can.
Okay.
I think he can guard threes, but I don't know that you want him guarding threes. Almost you're gonna have to devise with those two and either Bismack Biyombo or Nikola Vucevic. You're gonna have to devise something very different defensively. It feels like. And Frank Vogel's a genius. I think it's very possible. We'll see. They end up also just selling out of the rest of the draft. They had some really interesting picks actually, and they did end up with Wes Iwundu, right?
Right.
Yeah, so they end up with Wes Iwundu, who is a fine pick, I think, at number 33. But they sell 35 to Memphis for Ivan Rabb, a pick that I thought was fine there. I don't know that I was super high on it. I don't think I was super low on it. Pasechnik they sell for the Jeremy Grant pick, which is a first rounder that I don't know if it's ever going to be a first rounder. Is that kind of the situation? I think that's right, yeah. Unlikely to be a first rounder. Yeah, if I'm them, I'm just taking Derek White. I don't... Yeah. I think I would have made that pick. I'm not really sure what their calculus was there. Yeah, it's a little bit strange to me. Let's go ahead and move on again. Minnesota, we've talked about the New York Knickerbockers. They take Frank Ntilikina at number 8, surpassing Dennis Smith, Zach Collins, and Malik Monk. I don't really want to get into the rest of their draft because it's just going to frustrate me. There are a lot of complicated factors with the rest of their draft, we will say. Ntilikina, though, 6'5", 6'6" point guard, 7-foot wingspan, really good defender, really good shooter. The question with him is he a good enough athlete to get consistent penetration into the lane? I mean, he's a good triangle point guard, but are they putting too much value on the triangle is the question here, right? There's no circumstance where if I'm drafting a team, I'm taking Ntilikina over Dennis Smith. No, absolutely not. And I kind of think that the fact that they did take Ntilikina over Dennis Smith signals that they're really going to invest themselves in the triangle. Which is terrifying for Knicks fans. Oh, yeah. Yeah. Why would you even consider this? Dennis Smith is so damn good. I don't know. The guy who makes all of their basketball decisions was talking about trading their best player yesterday. So, can we talk about that too? Why the Knicks do anything at this point? They're a total disaster. So, I talked to a couple of teams involved with the Knicks because every single team called on Kristaps.
Of course. Why wouldn't you?
Like, the offers that the Knicks wanted for Porzingis were so outrageous that, like, no one was going to meet them, right?
Sure.
Like, the speculative offer of, like, Devin Booker and 4th overall, like, that was, like, one of the more rational ones that I heard.
Right.
So, with that being the case here, are they just trying to piss off Porzingis? Like, are they just trying to be like, yeah, like, we're just gonna, like, anger you for no reason, and we're gonna go zen and get through to you? Like, is that the goal, do you think? Like,
I don't know. I have no idea what the possible calculus that goes into this conversation is, because if you're going to make unreasonably high demands on teams for the player, then why wouldn't you just say that you're committed to keeping the player and not making them angry and hate you? Like, it just doesn't make any sense the way that they handled this.
No, it makes no sense at all to me. Like, it makes negative sense to me, in fact, that they would handle this in this manner. The rest of the way for the Knicks, I don't really want to get into the whole Damian Dotson thing.
Yep.
I will say this, like, I was pretty strong about it pretty immediately. I've gotten a couple of text messages that make me want to look into the case more. I am okay with being strong on it immediately, but, like, we'll see with him. He's a good basketball player. Ognan Yaramaz is one of my favorite human beings that play basketball. He is a 6'3", like, Serbian white kid that throws down on dudes. Like, he is like the Sam McDuffie. Do you remember Sam McDuffie, the dude who used to, like, jump over people in football, like the running back?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, he's like the Sam McDuffie of, like, the NBA draft to me.
I'm in.
Yeah, he's very fun. Number 9, that was Dennis Smith. I think Dennis Smith's going to be a finalist for Rookie of the Year this year. I'm all in on the Dennis Smith in Dallas train.
Yeah, I think that's a totally fair argument. I'm not really sure who else I would. I mean,
I would have Fultz. I would have
Fultz.
Lonzo probably.
We get to include Simmons, right?
We do get to include Simmons. That's a good point.
Yeah, so he's a sneaky one.
I would probably take Fultz over Simmons, and I would probably only take one of them.
Yeah, that's fair. Smith is a great option though. Like, that dude's just going to get so many opportunities.
All of the buckets.
And I really like it. It's funny because after the draft, everybody comes out and says that, like, they got their guy and they would have taken him number 1. I really like that Rick Carlisle said that when the Knicks took Ntilikina, their draft room stood up and started cheering because they were able to get Dennis Smith.
Of course. Like, I don't get it. News here real quick. Luke Cornett has signed a 2-way deal with the Knicks. I actually kind of dig that.
Yeah.
Cameron Oliver went undrafted and just flat out signed a contract with Houston.
Correct.
Like that.
After it came out that he was signing with Minnesota, right? And then...
Oh, I did not hear that.
There was, like, an initial report that he was signing with Minnesota, and then that got retracted, and it was with Houston. So I don't know if he was ever actually going to go to Minnesota, but that was the initial report.
Interesting. Let's kind of get through this here. Malik Monk at number 11. We've talked about Zach Collins, I believe. Or no, we didn't talk about Zach Collins because Zach Collins is going to Portland. What did you think of Portland? Yeah, what did you think of the Portland move for 15 and 20 for 10?
I think it's fine because the top 10 or 11 players are better than kind of that next set of players. I feel okay with him going to get Collins, too. He's the best center in the draft. I think that they need some center depth. He can probably play a few minutes with Nurkic. I think that it's okay. And they had the picks to go up and do it.
Yeah, I just wish that ultimately I'm sure that they tried to do this and it failed. I just wish that they could have found a way to dump money, right?
That's fair. Yeah.
Like, you have number 15 overall. Can you not attach number 15 to Evan Turner and get something? I don't know.
Right. Maybe not.
It felt like that was a missed opportunity, but I'm sure that it's something they considered and ended up just, like, not being able to do, right?
Right. I agree.
Number 11, Malik Monk. Charlotte had an interesting draft. Malik Monk ends up falling into their laps. Pretty much whoever went with Malik Monk after pick number, 9, I was going to think that was a home run, right?
Yep.
Like that.
Yep.
That dude is just able to shoot the absolute piss out of the ball, and he's going to be awesome off the ball. He's going to be a really good fit for them in general.
I agree. I really like that pick. Yep. I think that they should be totally happy he fell there.
Yeah. And, they're going to be defensive issues with Kemba Walker. They'll figure it out, I think.
I agree.
Dwayne Bacon, I believe they ended up with at number 40.
That's right.
I'm less sold on Dwayne Bacon, but
not a big fan.
Get it. He's a 6'5", 6'6" wing with long arms. He's athletic. Go for it. Maybe you can teach him to round out the rest of his game beyond his scoring ability. Luke Kennard ends up going to the Pistons at number 12. That was their only pick, right?
I think that's right. Yes.
Yeah. So I like this really, really bad shooting team last year. Picks up one of the best shooters in the draft. Ends up also getting a guy that I think is going to be able to play a little bit of point guard. He's going to be able to at least facilitate in and out of sets occasionally, I think.
Yeah, I think that that's totally fair. The only question that I had on this pick is whether or not you'd rather have Donovan Mitchell. I think I have Mitchell rated a little bit higher there. Kennard obviously is a better shooter, brings more of what they need to the table in that sense, but I just like Mitchell a little bit better as a prospect, but I think Kennard is totally fine.
So I've Kennard at 12, Mitchell at 13 on my board. That's the exact order they go in.
Yep.
For the Pistons, I'm good with Kennard, honestly. For the Utah Jazz, who end up getting Donovan Mitchell in a trade up, they trade number 24 and Trey Lyles for Donovan Mitchell. What was your reaction to this? I thought that ultimately it was a sensible deal for both sides.
Yeah, I think it's a totally fine deal for both sides. I like it less in retrospect for Denver, given the draft picks that they made after they made the deal. But at the time, I thought the deal was totally fine.
You can only evaluate this in a vacuum, kind of, right? The decision to make the trade is somewhat different than the decision at number 24. And I agree with you. And I didn't like the Tyler Lydon pick either.
Yeah, and to kind of say why looking at it in hindsight is so ridiculous, if OG Anunoby falls one more spot, we're talking about this being a total home run for the Nuggets.
Yes, absolutely, because that would have been the absolute perfect scenario for them.
Yeah, exactly. So at the time of the deal, I thought that it was totally fine. I really like Donovan Mitchell's fit with the Jazz. I think that he will fit in well in terms of the culture there. Gives him another really good defender, someone who's an improving shooter. Yeah, I thought it was totally fine for both sides at the time.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. Trey Lyles, any concern with him?
I don't know that he brings a ton of what you need next to Jokic.
Yeah.
But, what are you going to do?
Yeah, I guess that my thing is with him is I was incredibly impressed with him at Summer League last year. I thought that he was going to come into this year and really make a leap. That ended up not happening. That's a little bit scary to me, but we'll see. Bam Adebayo ends up going to Miami at number 14 out of Kentucky. Right. I had Bam at number 22 on my board, but I love this pick.
Do you? I don't really love this pick.
So the reason I love this pick, they have a significant need in the front court. I know that they do have Hassan Whiteside, but they have literally no one else there right now that's signed under contract next year. Bam, I think, is going to be able to do some really interesting things within their defensive scheme. They really like to play an aggressive defensive scheme that he is going to allow them to do different things either next to Hassan Whiteside or when Hassan Whiteside leaves the floor.
Right.
Obviously they can't go crazy blitzing screen and rolls whenever Hassan Whiteside is the guy in the screen and roll, right?
Right.
With Adebayo, you can kind of do that, though. You can do some different things, and I think he's going to give Spoelstra a really interesting weapon there defensively.
Yeah, I mean, with him, his best attribute or best skill in my mind is his ability to defend in space and move on switches. And I think that that's super valuable. It's just the rest of his game that I'm not super confident in. I don't know that he's going to be much of a rim protector at the NBA level. He wasn't much of one at the college level, and I'm not really entirely sure what he brings offensively. I would be very hesitant to play him next to Whiteside offensively because I don't think you'd have enough floor spacing. I don't really trust his jumper. I think you're a little higher on it than I am, maybe. At least from past conversations, but I do think that his ability to defend in space is really valuable. I just don't know that it's one that I love at 14.
Yeah, I think that's fair, but like also who were they going to pick?
I was just about to say it, but I'm not sure that I love anybody for them at 14. So like if they really liked Bam and they couldn't trade down or something like that to get him, then I'm fine with it. Yeah. It's okay.
Like he might be the highest upside guy here because he might be the highest skill guy and highest athleticism guy of the like Justin Patton,
right?
Like TJ Leaf, not skill guy over TJ Leaf, but way more athletic. John Collins, right. Harry Giles, like that group, Jared Allen, like all of those guys.
Sure.
So let's just kind of go through some notable picks. John Collins at number 19, a little bit lower, a little bit of a steal for me for Atlanta. I really like the production. I know that you're a little bit less high on him. What was your kind of your thought there with Atlanta?
I think he is a totally fine pickup for them at 19. I do think at some point you kind of have to trust that the production is valuable and will translate. I just don't know. I just have real questions about him as a prospect as a whole, I guess. Like I worry about his defense and his jump shot and all of that. But at 19, I think that it's totally fine. I maybe would have rather gone Jared Allen, even though they just got Plumlee back in that deal. But Collins is totally fine to me as somebody who I think can produce, quite a few buckets and grab a bunch of rebounds.
Terrence Ferguson at number 21 to Oklahoma City. This one was a little bit of a surprise to me. I honestly thought they were pretty locked in on Frank Jackson. I would not be that locked in on Frank Jackson, but from the perspective of what I was hearing, I thought they were pretty locked in on Frank Jackson. And then Ferguson kind of falls into their lap here at 21. He fits the Sam Presti MO, athletic guy, very raw, still kind of figuring out his abilities. Ultimately a very good kid as well. I worry on some level about this pick, despite him fitting a very clear need of 3-and-D next to Russell Westbrook.
Yeah, the thing to me, I guess, is I am not super high necessarily on Ferguson as a prospect because I think that there's a lot of downside risk in him.
Yeah.
But I also think that the Thunder are in a position where they're going to have to take some of those risks because finding two-way wings is really difficult. And I think it's one of their biggest needs. And I think just kind of taking a risk on somebody there makes a lot of sense. If it were me and on a personal board, I maybe would have liked to see him just take their shot on Juwan Evans. But I know that I think we're higher on them given where Juwan Evans went. We're higher on him than generally the NBA is as a whole, but they need a backup point guard. He's really good. I would have liked to see him in that spot. I'm totally fine with Terrence Ferguson in that spot, though, just because they do need to find those two-way players, and sometimes that means taking a risk when the next 4 or 5, 6 guys to come off the board are all big men.
Yeah, Jarrett Allen is one of those big men who end up going off the board next. To Brooklyn, a high upside pick, at least for Brooklyn. They continue to accumulate these high upside assets like D'Angelo Russell that we talked about in the previous podcast. I'm ultimately fine with it, especially given the fact that they traded Brook Lopez within the D'Angelo Russell trade. Allen fits the modern style of the NBA as a guy that good hands, rim runner, good touch around the basket. You just have to hope that he toughens up and that he ultimately decides to get the most out of his basketball abilities, essentially. It's on him.
Yeah, I totally agree. It's a risky selection to me, obviously, given some of that stuff. I'll be really interested to see how he fares outside of the Texas context where he was playing with some guards who I don't think necessarily put him in the best positions all the time, and where he was sharing the floor with another big man, so he was on the perimeter a decent percentage of the time as well.
Yeah, he won't do that in Brooklyn.
Right, exactly. That's what I mean. It's he'll finally have a chance to just sit back at the rim and block some shots, which I don't think he always had the opportunity to do at Texas. Yeah. I think it's a totally fine pick. I like where Brooklyn came out at the end of this week.
Yeah, I agree. They had probably... They did not have the best draft week, but they're probably in my top 5.
I would agree.
OG Anunoby goes number 23 to Toronto. I'm imagining that you are a big fan of this.
Big fan. I thought as soon as Toronto and OG matched up there, OG fell into their lap, that was kind of the obvious pick for them. I really like OG, assuming the knee is totally fine and he can recover.
For what it's worth, I've gotten more positive feedback than negative feedback on that.
Yeah, and that's good. The offense is obviously a major concern. I don't really know what he's going to be on that end ever, or that he'll be anything valuable. But like, if he's a 6'8" version of Tony Allen, like that's useful.
Yeah, no, I agree. 6'8", 7'3" wingspan, going to be incredibly switchable defensively. I don't think anyone doubts the defensive bona fides. I think it's all about what you get out of him offensively. That's a risk that the Raptors can take. Given the offensive talent they have, given the fact that Kyle Lowry is kind of boxed in right now in terms of what his options are in free agency. I like the pick, and I hope that he can get healthy. I was kind of like saying, though, to the internet, basically, hey, like, the NBA is not as high on this guy as the internet is. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like,
yes.
I feel like I tried to brace the internet for this fall.
Yeah, OG is definitely one of those dudes who's very the internet is very in love with him. I understand it. Like,
I don't, because the internet tends to be involved, like, very in on people with like personalities, and very in on people.
Yeah, he doesn't have that
with like like a flary offensive game, right? Like,
I think it's just so easy to go back and watch what he did to Jamal Murray a couple years ago and just be like, holy crap, that dude is ridiculous.
Yeah.
And, that's something that you can latch onto. I think it's easy to latch onto him as somebody who really fits in the modern NBA that wants switchable defenders. And so, I think that in that sense, he's easy to latch onto. Obviously, like, the Kawhi Leonard comparisons are ridiculous because he's not that dude. He has nowhere near that level of offensive game. But, he's somebody that I think gives you a really good baseline to work from, and if you can get something out of him offensively, he'll be a useful player.
Yeah. We can kind of skip down here a little bit. Derek White goes number 29.
Perfect.
Well, wait. Let's talk. Let's talk Tony Bradley at 28 real quick.
Oh, okay.
Were you in on the Tony Bradley experience?
No.
I don't get it, to be honest.
I don't either. Not a big fan.
Like,
he rebounds really well.
But he rebounds offensively really well. He's like a solid defensive rebounder,
Yeah. The only thing that I can think of with the Jazz here is, like, they have some contract issues. They need to save some money, so they shipped out Trey Lyles, and they drafted another big man for their front court rotation.
Well, I think it's that, and I think it's...
like,
I have to wonder if their success with Rudy Gobert, who suffered from similar ills in a lot of ways. Like, when I watched him in France, I thought that he was a little bit heavy-footed, and he didn't have, like, a crazy amount of lift, right?
Yeah.
But now you see him, they've gotten him into this peak physical condition, and he's gotten himself into this peak physical condition. And a lot of those problems have gone away. And with Bradley, he has one thing in common with Gobert, in that he has really good hands above the basket and at eye level, right? So maybe they're thinking that, like, their success with Gobert will, get them experience in dealing with Tony Bradley. I don't know the whole thing there, but he's not a guy that I'm super in on either. I
agree, and certainly not somebody that I would have traded 30 and 42 for.
Yeah,
like, they gave up, like, some real value to go get him,
especially
and move up 2 spots. Yeah, like 42 is a valuable pick in this draft.
Yeah. Derek White at number 29. I mean, of course, like you said, like,
he's like the perfect fit. You knew that they were going to take someone who was ridiculously good, who was probably undervalued by everybody, and they did. And here we are.
Yeah, I mean, it was just such an obvious pick. Derek White going to the Spurs. He does everything that they like. He can pass it. He can shoot it. He can score at all 3 levels. He was an incredibly reactive and intelligent defender. I'm not entirely sure how the athleticism is going to translate on that end, but he has great instincts, and he has the ability, and he has great instincts and great skill, essentially. Those are the guys that the Spurs have awesome success with.
Yep. I thought that was a total home run for them.
Yeah. Josh
100%.
Hart, to me, also very close to a home run.
Yeah, I love Josh Hart. He's one of my favorite players. I think he'll fit really well in Los Angeles. He brings some toughness to them defensively. A lot of the reasons, I guess, that, like, I think people thought Josh Jackson would be a good fit there in terms of kind of bringing someone competitive on the defensive end and bringing kind of that culture, I think Josh Hart brings that same thing.
Yeah, he does.
Like, he's going to try really hard on defense. He's going to bust his ass to guard people. I understand that there are some athleticism concerns. He's not as long as someone like Malcolm Brogdon or whatever, but, like, that dude is going to get up in you and fight you on every possession, and it's going to be really awesome to watch. And he's not somebody who's going to be sticky with the ball on the offensive end. He'll move it just as well as anybody. I feel really good about that pick. I like that fit there. Yeah,
me too. Frank Jackson at number 31. This was interesting because the Pelicans, end up selling Tim Frazier, essentially, is what this works out to being.
Right.
Because they sell number 52 at the end of the draft. They sell Tim Frazier to the Washington Wizards and end up taking Frank Jackson at 31. Not a point guard to me, though. He's more of a 2, and I just hope that they don't try and pigeonhole him into a point guard.
Yeah, I'm not a huge Frank Jackson fan. I know that there's kind of a group of people who really like him because of his athleticism, but I think that that's largely based on reading test numbers from the combine more than watching him play. Because I think that we agree that he doesn't necessarily translate that well. I agree with you. I think he's more of an undersized shooting guard than he is a point guard. I think he averaged something like 2.7 assists per 40 this year or something, which is like a really low number for a point guard.
Yeah, there's that. There's also the fact that, like you said to me, he doesn't apply his athleticism in a tangible manner on the basketball floor.
Right.
Because he's a 2-foot leaper, and he's a power athlete without like a crazy first step. Like he's a physical athlete more than he is.
Yeah, he's a big dude. He's 208 pounds at 6'4". Like, it's a big dude.
Yeah, no, it's not great. Trying to think, like, do we care
just
about?
Need to slide right on down to pick number 38 here?
Yeah, we can talk. I was going to say, like, we can talk 36. Like, does Jonah Bolden interest you?
Not really. It was pretty clear that the Sixers were just drafting a bunch of guys to stash because they have a bunch of young players to work into their roster, and so they took a bunch of guys they can leave overseas.
Yeah, he's not as interesting to me as he is to a lot of the internet.
Right.
Yeah, we can move to 38. Jordan Bell, we kind of talked about this at the top, right? Where, the Bulls end up doing this really
just
dumb
selling
thing.
this pick because the wings that they wanted were off the board at this point, is what they said.
Well, I think that more what happened was Shemi Ojale, who was a 4-year player, was off the board. Frank Mason, who was a 4-year player, was off the board.
Jordan Bell's like a 5-year player, though.
It's true, yeah.
Or, no, he's a 4-year player because he left a year
player.
early, right?
He's a 4-year player, yeah.
This is perfect for the Bulls system.
Yeah.
And then they just let him go. They just sold him for $3.5 million to the Warriors, who are rigging the 38th pick in the NBA draft again.
Yeah,
and just get like the perfect dude to go play in their system.
Like, I had Jordan Bell at number 24 on my board. Like, this is a steal for any team. For the Warriors particularly, you can make an argument that he's like a top 18 prospect, top 16
it's absolutely ridiculous. Like, he's just going to switch everywhere defensively. He can pass the ball. Like, it's the perfect fit. The Warriors, once again, totally knock it out of the park.
Like, he's going to need to... He's going to be at his best in lineups with Draymond Green, right? Because he's not a guy that actually defends, centers all that well. Like, he gets bullied. He gets pushed around a little bit for a center. You know what I mean?
Sure.
Like, if you see him, he's 6'9", 225 pounds. He's obviously fucking huge. But, if you see him compared to other basketball players that have to bang inside as centers, he really is quite small. If you see him in
person. He doesn't have the reach of Draymond or something like that. But he's going to fit in so well there, and it's just going to be silly.
Yeah, no, that's a perfect pick. Another perfect pick. You don't understand how excited I am that Juwan Evans is going to be out
baby
in Los
CP3
Angeles.
With real CP3.
Yeah,
oh man.
You know who so I've been saying this stat. I don't know if I've said it on the podcast or if I've just written it. So over the course of the Ken Pom era, which I believe is 2001, there have been essentially 3 instances where a singular point guard leads his team without any other NBA draft prospects to the number 1 offense in the country.
Okay.
Juwan Evans did it this year. Chris Paul did it 2 years at Wake Forest. That's it. Like,
nice.
Every
so
other
perfect.
Yeah, every other Division I, college basketball team that's finished number one in offensive efficiency has had like multiple NBA players, except the years that Juwan Evans and Chris Paul were there. This is just such a goddamn home run pick that like.
Yeah, I'm like totally baffled that the Clippers did good things.
Oh yeah,
in terms like
they just
nailed the Juwan Evans picks, nailed the Sindarius Thornwell pick in my opinion.
Yep.
Like really just great.
Yeah.
Evans is a wonderful player. He was somewhere, I think, right above 20 in our big board.
17 for me, yep.
Yeah, total home run.
Yeah.
Total home run.
Yeah, the fact that Derek White got to 16 is crazy to me. The fact that Shemi Ojeleye got to 37 is crazy to me. And the fact that Juwan Evans got to 39 is crazy to me. All of those guys were top 20 players on my board. And they fit the modern NBA to a T. It's just so weird.
Yeah.
We've talked Dwayne Bacon. Tyler Dorsey's interesting to me because I think he's just going to play in the NBA for a while. Like, that guy can just get buckets. He is an awesome shooter off the bounce, an awesome shooter off the catch. He can create his own shot. He's 6'5" now. Like, there's actually quite a bit to like on him as a shooter.
Yeah, he's, I think, totally fine as a second-round flyer here for Atlanta. Like, he'll go get buckets. There are obviously, I think, some athleticism concerns. He's probably not really ever going to defend anybody, but, he's definitely going to get buckets.
Yeah, for sure. Isaiah Hartenstein, do we care?
Nope.
No, like he's
fine.
He's interesting at least. Dylan Brooks at number 45 is interesting.
Going to Memphis.
He's not going to Memphis, right? Is he?
I think he's going to Memphis. I think Memphis bought that pick.
Did they really?
Yeah, I think so.
This would be interesting. They did.
Going to Memphis. Yeah.
I dig that.
I think it's okay.
I dig both spots, honestly. Like, I have Dylan Brooks at, like, number 50 on my board, but I think that, to be honest, I underrated him. Like,
I think interesting. Like, he can be a really nice playmaker. Became a really good passer. To me, it's really just all about, is his shooting going to hold?
Yeah, I mean, if he's a shot maker, he's an NBA player.
Yeah.
Probably.
100%.
Like he's a smart player. He's a really good passer that's developed that way. I mean, defensively, there are going to be issues, but I dig it. Sterling Brown Sterling Brown goes number 46. Sterling Brown was a guy that was an internet darling, right?
He was.
And you just watch those two
all
play.
All of the SMU players were internet darlings this week. Like, every single player on SMU was a sleeper.
Yeah, that aspect of it was weird. Like, it felt like a lot of people just didn't watch SMU this year. But, you watch Dylan Brooks and you watch Sterling Brown, right? And I get the fact that Sterling Brown has longer arms and, occasionally defends well. But Dylan Brooks is just, he has so much more game. He can actually dribble, and he's a really good passer, and he has just higher basketball IQ levels. Part of me doesn't get. I get the Sterling Brown thing, but also part of me doesn't.
Yeah, I mean the best argument for Sterling Brown, right, is that you can be pretty confident that he's going to be a good shooter.
Yeah,
and shooting matters, and I don't know that you can be confident that Dylan Brooks is going to be a good shooter. But Sterling Brown ending up in Milwaukee is pretty perfect.
It is.
Get a 3-and-D guy, and
Yeah. Vlatko Čančar to the Nuggets. That's just the most Nuggets pick humanly possible. We mentioned
another power forward.
Yeah. We mentioned Sindarius Thornwell earlier. That's a perfect pick for the Clippers. They did a really good job of using this draft that is deep with accomplished players already and trying to fill out the rest of their roster with it. I love the fact that they did that.
I thought it was great.
Yeah, Ike Onobogu at 47 fell for the knee conditions, but again, worth the flyer. Monte Morris at 51, I think we're both very, very high on, right?
Yeah, Team Monte Morris.
Yeah.
Very good. Best thing the Nuggets did all night, probably.
Probably the best thing the Nuggets... I have a draft grade of, let's see, I had Tyler Lydon at 29 and Monte Morris at 34.
Yeah.
So
I think Monte's a great selection there. They'll be very happy with him.
Yeah, that about says that. He's going to be in the NBA for a long time. Edmund Sumner at 52. Where is Sumner going? Is he going to Indiana? Is that right?
Indiana, yeah.
I've heard very not great things about the knees.
That's not good.
Yeah,
not good.
That's a little bit scary. I hope that they end up being okay, and I hope that he can
absolutely
have a very long-term career. We'll see. I would imagine that, given the fact that he went at 52, I would imagine that some teams had him green flagged.
Yeah, he's fun. He's one of the fastest players I've ever seen in person.
Yes.
Really, really ridiculously fast. Kind of fun. Big body, but needs to add a ton of weight and strength. And I'm sure that being out with an ACL injury is not helping.
Yeah. Nigel Williams-Goss at 55 is interesting to me. We've talked Peters. We've talked Allen. Williams-Goss at 55, he can step in and be a backup point guard, kind of fill the Shelvin Mack role, hopefully. Jaron Blossom game at 59. I wasn't real sure he was an NBA player, but I like the idea of trying to get him with, the San Antonio witch doctors that fix shots.
Yep. That's exactly my feeling. It's like, if he's going to end up anywhere and turn into a productive player, that's probably the spot, because if anybody can figure out how to make him shoot the ball okay, it's them.
Yeah.
And if he can shoot, he's probably an NBA player.
Probably an NBA player if he can shoot. Alpha Kaba, number 60. I've never been super interested in him. He's kind of a, just long, athletic dude who can shoot. Doesn't do a whole lot else for me, though.
Yeah, I tend to agree.
Anything, is there any other kind of thing that we need to talk about here, within this draft, any other grander point that has kind of gone under the radar from what we've talked about?
The only thing that I can really think of is I'm pretty surprised that we didn't get a Paul George move.
I am too. That's a great point.
I really thought that that's something that was probably going to happen tonight. I think if you're Indiana, I understand. Indiana in no way can be happy with the offers that they're getting for Paul George right now. But those offers are not going to get any better as the season progresses, and I have no idea why you wouldn't just take the best offer that you can take now and rip the Band-Aid off and move on with your life. I was very surprised that we didn't get a Paul George deal tonight at some point.
I cannot see a circumstance where they get better value in 3 weeks.
Right.
Or next week.
Yeah.
It's just really difficult for me to see that, especially given the depth of this draft, right? So, assuming that at this stage they're just kind of playing for next year's draft, right?
Right.
It's tough for me to see how they're going to get better players if they try and shoot for the 2018 draft picks. I just don't. I can't get behind it, I guess. It just does not make sense to me at all. You have to hope that Kevin Pritchard knows something we don't, that he has offers on the table that make sense. I haven't seen, I don't see it. I don't see how he's going to do better.
Yeah, I tend to agree. But that was the one big thing that kind of shocked me that just didn't happen.
Yeah. I kind of expected that too. I'm trying to think of, undrafteds. Let's talk about the undrafted guys.
Yeah.
The best undrafted guy for me was Jonathan Motley. He was the only guy in my, top 46 to go undrafted. Only 3 of my top 51 went undrafted as well. He was at 36 for me, like I said. I was shocked, generally, that I know that the knees were an issue, but I was shocked that they were such an issue that he was left out of the draft.
Yeah, I tend to agree. I really like Motley as a player. I think that he brings a lot of stuff that you want out of somebody who's going to either play a power forward or center in the modern NBA. He can shoot it a little bit. He's a pretty good defender. He's a tough guy, passes it really well, which I think is kind of an underrated skill for a big man. I was surprised that he didn't get drafted. I wonder how much of him not getting drafted maybe had to do with not being super excited about playing in the D-League for somebody. And we'll be interested to see where he signs on, because I don't think that he's signed on anywhere yet.
Yeah. LJ Peak is another guy that really interests me, 6'5", really will defend. Wouldn't surprise me if he ends up making a roster as an undrafted guy. Alberto Abalde is averaging double figures in the ACB and didn't get drafted.
Useful player.
Like, and like his skill, he's really interesting too. Like, he isn't even shooting that well yet, and he's averaging double figures in the ACB. Like, if that shot comes along, he's going to be really good, and he's going to be sought after, I think, in the free agency market. Devin Robinson, were you surprised that he went undrafted?
A little bit, just because I thought teams would value wings later in the draft. But again, maybe that's a situation where, like we saw Jabari Bird get the draft and stash most likely at like 56, right? And maybe like Devin Robinson wasn't amenable to that. Like, I think Wayne Selden was in that same situation last year. Like, they asked him if he would do it, and he said no.
Yep.
And I think Devin Robinson, I saw already signed a summer league deal with the Wizards. So he's going to get a shot. I was a little surprised that he didn't get drafted. I think that there are a number of wings that you could say that about who had an opportunity to get drafted, who will have an opportunity to play. LJ Peak is one. Malcolm Hill is another one, I think, who will have an opportunity.
Yeah, agreed with both of those guys. PJ Dozier goes undrafted. Yep. He's with the Lakers, it looks like. The knees are a concern there, as they have been throughout his career. Jake Wiley, VJ Beacham, and by the way, I'm reading Draft Express's list. John, John Gavoni tweeted this out after, because John is the best and has always kept track of this immediately after the draft. Jake Wiley, VJ Beacham, Andrew White was a name that I thought could get called. Shooter that can just absolutely knock down shots.
Absolutely elite shooter.
Isaiah Briscoe, Derek White, Kobe Simmons is a guy that left early. Eric Mika left early. Deontay Burton is interesting. Melo Trimble left early. James Blackman left early. Chris Boucher has already signed a two-way with the Golden State Warriors. Peter Jock.
Because of course he did.
I'm not real excited about him. So
I'm not super excited either. But if like if the Warriors were going to sign somebody, it's like some dude who can block some shots and shoot threes.
That's true. Isaac Humphries, Kennedy Meeks, Antonio Blakeney, another guy who left early. Yeah, no, not all of these guys are going to be super pleased with what ends up happening in their careers. Anything else? If we hit on everything, I feel like at this stage?
I think we have. I had a really awesome night. I thought the draft was super fun. We should probably do it again next year, I guess.
You mean you haven't gotten to the point where you want just a free agency market of? I mean, I'm entering the workforce. Free agents.
Well, look, that's a whole nother topic. The draft is bad, and labor should be free to go wherever they want. But since the draft isn't going anywhere, we can do it again next year.
Chris, tell the people where they can find your work.
They can find my work over at Fansided on the Step Back. And on Twitter at Seastone Hoops.
Chris has done a fantastic job all draft season, talking with me, talking over at Fansided, everything to do with the NBA draft. Chris has done a great job. One of my favorite people to get a chance to talk to, which is why I keep having him on the show. This has been the Game Theory Podcast. I am, gonna take a little weekend hiatus from the podcast. Certainly, I will be
go hibernate.
Gonna hopefully be back on Monday. We'll see if I'm awakened by then. Hopefully, the NBA doesn't go too crazy over the course of the next couple days. We have 8 days until free agency, so that's fun. Thank you all for listening to the podcast leading into the draft. We're going to keep it going here, going into NBA free agency, going into the college basketball offseason. All of that fun stuff is going to continue here on the Game Theory Podcast. Again, thank you all for listening. It's been a fantastic run here. I really appreciate it. I really appreciate you supporting my work over at Sporting News, over at Vice, over at Seth Davis's site, Seth's Draft House, where my mock draft was housed. Anything else? I'm trying to think. Do I have anything else, Chris? Is there?
Not that I know of.
I was going to say, I feel like I do too much. Thank you all for listening to this show. Until next time, we will talk soon. Bye.